You're tuned to KSJE, Farmington, New Mexico, 90.9 FM. And now 103.3 FM, K277CR, Durango, Colorado. KSJE is supported by San Juan Regional Medical Center, whose vision is to deliver world-class care, making life better for the communities they are privileged to serve. Offering a comprehensive range of inpatient, outpatient, and emergency care services so residents can live life better here. San Juan Regional Medical Center, community owned and operated, here for you.
Welcome to the Pop Shop with SPD. I'm Shanice Gonzales, the Public Information Officer, and with me as always is Chief Hebbe. How are you, Chief?
Good. How are you, Shanice?
Good. We've done a ton of traveling in the last month. It's good to finally be back.
It is. Mine's been more localized. You're kind of an international traveler.
Yeah. Unfortunately, I always get sick with that international travel, but I'm making a recovery and I feel good.
Well, that's good. Shanice was telling me a little of her trip. She went to Ireland and was getting some of the history there, which you found awful interesting.
Fascinating, yeah. I'm in a big, deep dive on learning more right now.
Yeah, a lot of for those of us of my generation, the Irish Republican Army, the Ulster organization, the British Army engaged in a long war and a bloody, violent one, all through the 70s, 80s, and 90s. I think the peace deal was finally struck in the early 2000s and has kind of tenuously held ever since then, but it was kind of Shanice's first on-the-ground look at all the different aspects of that still haven't been resolved.
And it's still segregated. I don't think a lot of people know that. I definitely didn't. I knew all about the wars and stuff, but I didn't know that in Belfast there's still a peace war or a peace wall segregating the Catholics and the Protestants, and that wall closes at 6:30. The kids don't go to the same schools. They're not allowed in the same pubs. That blew me away. I didn't know that was something that we were still dealing with.
Hard to believe in 2025, but it is. Closer to home, we've been extremely busy on a number of fronts. The first sad news to report right off the bat is Dona County Deputy Antonio Aleman died in the line of duty just a couple days ago. We're wearing our mourning bands up here in Farmington through his funeral. He was involved in a car crash, marking the second officer in New Mexico that's been killed so far this year or died in the line of duty. So those are always difficult for law enforcement, but really can happen any day. We've been fortunate at FPD. We have not had an officer killed in any event, but unfortunately, Dona County can't say the same right now, and so keep them in your thoughts. Another event that we had just recently was the 4th of July parade, which made a comeback of sorts. It had been off for a couple of years, and Scott, you always play a huge prominent role in any major parade.
I don't know about that, Chief, but just there to announce all the floats and entries and things like that. It was a great parade.
It was a great parade. Those are always pretty well attended. Shanice, I think you went. No, maybe we haven't had one since you've been P.I.O.
No, and then this year I was out of town. I had to make a quick run to Texas, and then you guys had sent me pictures.
Yeah.
And I watched some flyover of the parade and seeing all the lights and stuff. That was cool.
Yeah, no, to me, it's it's America, right? It's a parade down Main Street on the 4th of July. How can you have anything more American? So I have always liked it, and I thought it was a little smaller than some of the previous parades. I think as it goes along, they'll get more floats and get people aware of it again. We weren't even aware that it was coming back until just a month or so ago. We got our vehicle and some of our personnel in it. So, I look forward to that coming back and becoming the bigger event. It used to be just literally thousands of people would be down there packed in watching the parade, which I always thought was just outstanding. It couldn't be any more American. So I was pleased it's made a comeback. I think Devin Neely over at the county played a big role in it and kind of resurrecting it.
True. His role with Film Four Corners, that's the group that sponsored the parade this year. So, but Devin
I
is
didn't
part of
even
that
know
too.
that.
Yeah.
Well, very good.
There you go.
So congratulations to Devin and that group. I thought it was a great event. And Shanice kind of alluded to some of the travel that we've been doing. We had a law enforcement summit, which I think you saw in the paper if you're following the Tri-City record. And that was something that myself, Sam Bregman from Bernalillo County, the district attorney, and the DPS, Jason Bowie, had talked about previously, but it was really DPS and the Chiefs Association that partnered and put this on. And from my perspective, it was a chance for us to get together and kind of talk about issues affecting law enforcement and really to see if we can kind of coalesce some sort of a response to a legislature that really did not produce much in the way of improving public safety this last session. There was a bill that did some things on competency, which of course is necessary, and I was pleased with that part. But even at the time that was passed, it was about a month into a 2-month session. One of the senators said, "I know a lot of you don't feel like this goes far enough, but it's early. Trust us. There's going to be more stuff coming." And naively, I did think there would be more stuff coming. And then a month later, I realized how naive can you be and still be 34 years into a career believing crap like that. So nothing more came. There were no other bills. There was a bill to increase the punishment and the categorization of the crime for aggravated assault on a police officer. That passed out of the House and was never heard in the Senate. Never even heard it. And then just 2 months later, we have an officer killed in the line of duty. So, I know you didn't get a chance to go with me to that event, and you maybe will. I'm looking at maybe another one in October. But it was a good event.
And I hear so many of the discussions. So I did go with you to the legislative session when I first started working, and you're testifying about all these things, and you're giving statistics on our department itself and our police officers and things that we're struggling with, and you're talking about, like, the problem is bad-mouthing the profession, and they've thrown money at it, and that's about the extent of how they've been able to help. I'm sure that's frustrating for you.
It is, because by now we've got 5 years worth of data that shows it isn't working, right? So I was saying from the start, we were full staffing in 2017, 2018, and we weren't paying anything close to what we're paying now. So the question was never money. The question was always the intangibles. How do the police feel about being in the profession? Do they feel like they're making a difference? Do they feel like they're respected? Do they feel like they have support? And then for people considering the profession, what does that look like? Am I just going to be yet another viral video? Am I going to get sued? Am I going to get imprisoned? And that was the chatter for a good couple of years. And then we backed off from it when we realized, holy cow, it's actually having a negative impact. Well, maybe if we throw money at the problem, that'll fix it. And then lo and behold, 5 years later, it has not fixed it. But we don't go and do any of the other things we know were the root causes of it in the first place.
And at this summit, can you speak to, like, who all attended? I know chiefs of police, we've had sheriffs there. Did we have any judges there? Like, what other professions were there?
We opened it up to, because judges can't lobby, and of course they can't really weigh in one way or the other. What do they think the law should say? Their job is to enforce the law. We invited district attorneys. There were a couple that made it. We invited sheriffs, and Sheriff Ferrari and Under Sheriff Corey Tanner and Captain Kevin Burns all attended from San Juan County. So San Juan County was pretty well represented. I think Chief Gonzales from Aztec was there as well. So we had a number of chiefs from around the state. I think all told, what we wound up with was an audience of about 50 to 55 that attended. So on reasonably short notice, on kind of a new topic, something that we hadn't done before ever, I was pleased with the initial reaction. I think the sheriffs had a conference that was going on at the same time. It just worked out that way, and I think we'll coordinate better with them in the fall.
That's great.
So some of the bigger topics that I wanted to hit in the course of it was recidivism, and we've talked about that here enough. to include the homicide, the double homicide we had last fall, with a guy that was sentenced to 18 years in prison with 5 years of probation, and he did a total of 5, and just happened to be out to murder 2 people. That's the kind of thing that has been just vexing to me. But there's other issues as well. Juvenile crime really hits the rest of the state hard. We have not seen it as badly up here, but I was talking with District Attorney Bregman just a week or so ago, and he says his office has prosecuted, in the 2.5 years that he's been the district attorney, they've prosecuted 73 juveniles for murder. And that's just stunning. But he had bill after bill that had been introduced that he was sponsoring this last session, and none of them went anywhere, to address juvenile crime, to try and rewrite a children's code that was probably written in the 60s, maybe the early 70s, but has not been updated and is in no way prepared to deal with the crime wave that we're seeing with juveniles. And that really has, I know Portales, I know Las Cruces. Las Cruces, even their mass shooting that they had this spring, involved juvenile, at least one suspect, and I think a couple of them were juveniles. So it is a significant problem for New Mexico. So we talked about juvenile crime, we talked about recidivism, we talked about recruitment and retention. What are some things that we can do as law enforcement leaders? What can we take forward and tell the legislature and the governor, here are things we believe will improve the profession and help in the short term as well as long-term development of the profession. But in the short term, we've got to fix a number of things to keep people safe and to try and get more officers in.
And what does recruiting look like for us right now?
We're struggling. There's just no way around it. We've beefed up our recruiting unit. We have about 5 folks in there now, so that we can receive more. We're traveling more outside the area, hitting military bases in particular, where folks might be chaptering out and are looking for a job as they transition. But we have definitely struggled. Retention has been a struggle as well. Some of it's normal retirement. Some of it's people just getting fed up and leaving the profession. I know that we lost a couple of potential hires, not necessarily regular employees, but we lost some people that were in the hiring pipeline when Officer Ontiveros was killed. It just came in and said, my family doesn't want me to do this, my wife doesn't want me to do this, and they pulled their applications out. So those things almost always do have an impact in the short term, and it takes a little while to get over it, but certainly Ontiveros's killing was impactful.
And how has that changed in the 10 years that you've been here? Have we always struggled with recruiting, or did it really take off, like with the George Floyd and bad-talking police in the media?
That was it. I mean, no way around it. And so by December of 2020, I was in policing for 30 years, and I never saw anything like what we were going through in the last half of 2020 and the first half of 2021. And you had officers getting out of the profession fast, and our recruiting numbers just dried up. And we weren't doing the same old stuff we used to do. We really just kind of hang a shingle up and people would come because they wanted to be cops. We weren't doing that. We were aggressively using our recruiting team to go out to different work fairs around the area, job fairs, and we were also using social media more and trying to get the analytics down so we could target certain areas and certain folks that might be interested in policing, and it completely dried up. So it took us a year. In 2021, the legislature passes HB 4, which is the Civil Rights Act, which started off very, very vocally of stripping immunity, qualified immunity from officers. They were going to hold bad officers accountable. They talked it and talked it and talked it. And then right at the last dog haul, and I am speed testifying because they give you 1 minute to counter. I am speed testifying repeatedly about how bad this bill is. Do not do this. And so what they wound up doing, which is kind of classic legislative move, frankly, is, okay, we won't do that. What we'll do is we won't hold the individual officer accountable. We'll still make it's easier to sue the agency, the police department, and the chief, and we'll raise all the caps from the tort claim, so it went from like $400,000 to $2 million per incident. And we'll then broaden it as well. It's any government worker. So teachers are now eligible for it. District attorneys are eligible to be sued under it. So here was the bill, and it's the classic thing. We're going to do something that's totally stupid and is going to hurt the profession. And then everybody rises up and says, don't do it, it's going to be bad. Well, okay, we won't do that. We'll just do this other horrible thing that you'd have opposed in the first place. And they did it. And 4 years later, our recruiting numbers are terrible, and officers hate how often they're being sued. The lawyers like it, which ties in kind of cutely with nearly a third of the legislature is attorneys, many of them plaintiff attorneys, and we write laws that help them. So that it's frustrating.
Broken system.
Yeah. For some.
Yeah.
For some. So our recruiting numbers, we are drawing more applicants than we were a couple of years back, so the mood is changing some, but the quality of the applicants isn't the same. We struggle still to kind of sort through a lot of people who are saying they're interested in it but really aren't cut out for it, to find those few that really we can bring in. And of course everybody talks about lowering the standards, and we're not lowering the standards, but at a certain point it certainly is going to be impactful if we're not able to respond to calls with the same level of service that we always have. And I was not the only chief down there lamenting that position. There's many departments across the state that are struggling in the same area. So.
And it's hard because I listen to so many of your guys' discussions, and we're not dealing with the same generation of your generation. Your generation was taught to work hard and to retire in that same profession, and so that you can do something after retirement. And the trend that you guys are seeing now is cops are about cops for 5 years, and then they change and go find something else that interests them, and so we're not being able to keep them for the full 25 years to retirement.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know how much I cared about my pension when I started. Obviously I care about it now. Later in life it's a good thing, but so it's probably all young people that struggle with that a little bit. When you're 23, you're not thinking about what you're doing when you're 48. It's more than twice your life. So I don't know that that's always been the draw. I think the 5-year mark, 5 to 7 years, was, even in my generation, was a time where people would reevaluate. Because about that time you realize, I'm not changing the world. The world is not stopping because Steve Hebbe is a police officer. So it can be a sobering mark. What's worse right now is just the environment for the cops. So they're already kind of down on it, and they feel like they're being attacked, and they certainly are with First Amendment auditors, with increased lawsuits, with the body cam, the scrutiny on television and in the media of everything they do. So they already have those things. They hit that 5 to 7 year mark where in my generation you kind of push through that. Yeah, there was some ups and downs. They're not pushing through it. They're realizing, I actually could go off and do something else. And the lure of, we had a 20-year pension for so many years, and now it's a 25-year pension. So when you're 5, 6, 7 years in, it's forever off. And so that isn't a big enough draw. So we've got to get past this time period. We've got to get our elected leaders to understand the impact of the things they do. And that to me is just foundational. I listen to some of them actually talking about leadership like it's the chiefs and sheriffs. And, honestly, baby, leadership starts at the state capitol. And how are you leading our state, and what's the rhetoric you're providing for us? And then behind that, we're going back and we're trying to move our profession forward. But when the leaders of the government have nothing but negative crap to say, or say positive things but do negative things, there's no leadership behind there that's going to fix that. You're setting a tempo and an environment that is making it very difficult for us to succeed.
And that's recruiting. If we can go back to juvenile crime real quick. What has juvenile crime looked like for Farmington over the course of the last 5 years or so? Are we facing the same things like Albuquerque's facing? Is that as big of a deal here as it is everywhere else across the state?
It really is not here. Albuquerque has really been under siege at times, and it's serious crime. It's robberies, it's carjackings, it's homicides, it's shootings, aggravated assaults. We've had a smattering of that, but we've always had a smattering of that. I think Farmington in some ways lags behind the rest of the state sometimes on crime trends, and this is one that a year from now we might be talking much more seriously about it. And a foundational part of it really is we've built the entire criminal justice system right now, and I've talked about that a little bit. We're focused on the criminal, we're not focused on the justice. And so if you think the catch and release and the pretrial release rules are bad, within the juvenile code, there's almost no consequences for these kids. And you listen to District Attorney Bregman talk about it, nobody's going to the detention facilities, nobody. And they're picking them up on serious crimes until they commit a homicide. Then they're charged as adults and they're in prison for years. So, the system is so screwed up that we don't hold people accountable, so they don't learn that there's consequences until they finally go too far. By then somebody's dead. Now their life's ruined too. So I think there are leaders within the legislature that are listening. I actually like the Speaker of the House, Javier Martinez. He is listening and has some thoughts on some of these issues, but we've got a long way to go to get folks on board. The other one I want to hit on before we get going and head off for another weekend. So the number of officers shot at in San Juan County since January of 2022 is 6. And in those 6 instances, you had 2 Farmington officers wounded, you had a Bloomfield officer killed, you had a state police officer wounded, and then there were 2 others that were extremely close. It was Farmington officers and sheriff's office officers that were being shot at, and then you had a state police officer that had a number of shots fired at him by what looks like a homicide suspect. So I brought that to the law enforcement conference as, look, we've got to take crimes against our cops more seriously. And obviously the killing of Officer Ontiveros drove that home. And Chief Medina was sitting there from Albuquerque, and he tells me in the 5 years he's been chief, they've had 8 officers shot in Albuquerque. Well, I didn't even know that. And so I start mulling that over in the days afterwards. I approach the Tri-City Record. Hey, this would be a worthwhile story to look at, humanize the faces of the people who are doing this job and who are getting shot. And because nobody knows up here that there's 8 officers. Nobody knows what they look like. Nobody knows they have families. Maybe you've heard a number. You just heard it from me today. We still don't see all their pictures. And so what I envisioned was a whole newspaper full of it. And Deborah actually wrote a decent article for us highlighting the officers here in San Juan County. But I approached the Cabinet Secretary, Jason Bowie, about that at a state level. Maybe we go to the Albuquerque Journal and we try and get something done on it. And his first thought was, I don't even know where we get that data. There is not a repository in New Mexico where I can go in, log on, and I can see, here's the number of officers that have been shot in the last 5 years. Here's the number of officers that have been stabbed. We have to report crap down to Santa Fe of all types, almost all negative. And you don't even have a database where we can see who's being assaulted. How do you pass legislation if you don't even understand the scope of the problem? So I can't even, sitting here today, I can't tell you how many officers have been shot in New Mexico in the last 5 years. Can't do it. Certainly couldn't produce the here's what happened, here's their pictures, here's the departments they are. Can't produce it. It would take us contacting about 5 or 6 different entities to try and consolidate that. Now I am going to try and do something like that because to me it is important that we drive that home. But I talked on this show a little bit ago about police violence, a term that ACLU has coined and has been used some, like it's gang violence or domestic violence. And in those numbers, they lump in when the officer's being shot at and he shoots the suspect. That's police violence. So, the dearth of information about the actual threats that our officers face is sobering in New Mexico and will definitely be on my agenda for things to fix coming up in this legislative session. So,
Fantastic.
With that, Shanice, have a good weekend.
You
Welcome
too.
back to America.
Thank you.
Got a bit of the Irish in you. Scott's in shorts today, so for the love of Pete, I don't know what to say.
It's hot out there.
He's going golfing. He's going to have a good time.
Well,
Enjoy
I'm
the
trying to hang
sunshine.
tough here, but I will see you in 2 weeks here on the Cop Shop with FBD. Thanks for joining us.
Thank you.